It's finally time to answer the question on who would win a fight between Meliodas, leader of the 7 deadly sins, and Aladdin, the son of Solomon. Man, this took a lot of thinking to figure out who would win, and made me have to consider just how I was going to best find out who wins. So with that, what goes into determining who wins? And this here, what I'm about to tell you, will be my rubric going forward with each and every fight I do. The rubric goes as follows. Each fighter is fighting with their best effort to make it so the enemy fighter can't keep fighting for at least a longer period of time than what allowed them to have stopped the enemy fighter in the first place. So this can be by knockout, death, or battlefield removal, aka BFR. What I mean by comparing winning to the period of time it takes a fighter to have stopped the enemy fighter mostly applies to battlefield removal. For example, if someone can warp or seal a person for, say, 1 hour, but doing so, it deeply weakens them for a day, I don't consider that a win. If within that very next hour, the person just breaks out, still ready to go, and can now kill the weakened person who, quote-unquote, BFR'd them. That said, if it takes an hour for them to get out, but only 30 minutes for the person to just, do it again, I mean, it's essentially GG, and that would be a successful BFR win. Just to make sure it's clear, when I talk about like knockout or death, what I'm saying here is if it takes you, just 1 second to throw out a punch and that's what can knock people out, then them being knocked out for longer than that, that's going to be a knockout. You won. Congratulations. But for example, if you take two like professional boxers, there's times where they're knocked out for like the briefest of seconds, like the fractions of seconds, and the fight's still continuing. That's not a win by knockout, even though they were technically knocked out for a bit. So that's what I'm saying. The amount of time that they are knocked out, dead is self-explanatory, but that they're knocked out or removed from the battlefield, to me, needs to be in relation to what put them in that situation to begin with. Next, starting distances in a battle will be set to even out the fight as much as possible. Rather, I'm not trying to make it even it out as in like make every fight a 50-50. What it is that the battlefield is set up that it's not advantageous for any given person. This also applies to what type of battlefield it is. Having Gara fight someone just in a desert, that's obviously, way much towards him than another fighter in general. Additionally, both fighters will have zero knowledge of each other. And lastly, my take on who ultimately wins will be a number out of 100 fights. Giving a simplified, this person wins isn't good enough for me. So all that said, I hope you enjoy how these are laid out. So let's break down this fight. Right from the beginning, it should be understood that with the different amount of powers each has, Aladdin has a huge advantage here, being able to manipulate many things to high levels that Meliodas he can't even use full or vanish counter on, such as his Dora of Sabaha, allowing for vector manipulation, Dora of Lohiyara, giving him very potent gravity manipulation, Dora of Medon, stopping enormous amounts of kinetic force, and Dora of Asara, allowing for an amount of force to be applied for an eternity, forever. This doesn't mean Meliodas' full counter and vanish counter are useless, however. Aladdin has access to plenty of elemental magic that Meliodas can physically interact with and counter. But what we have here is Aladdin being able to easily change the direction of both Meliodas and his attacks. While also, Aladdin can also warp him a large distance away, within a massive AoE at the same time that can do this. Interestingly, nothing would suggest that his ability to stop the kinetic force, where he shows that he can do this to an enormous amount of water, that amount of water that doesn't have a will of its own, nor has as much total force as an attack of Meliodas. So he can stop a large amount of kinetic force, but nothing would actually purely suggest that he would be able to fully stop the kinetic force of Meliodas himself. Only his attacks, that of course likewise don't have a will of their own, that would be scaling within range of that water. Still, very useful, but out of all these things, it should be made clear, all of this is the crux of Aladdin pulling out the victory via his abilities to manipulate the battlefield, positioning, and ultimately, his ability to send Meliodas away for all eternity with Dada Fasada. And looking at just the abilities, it would seem Aladdin has it in the bag for sure. But let's look at what it means for Meliodas to have the powers he does in this matchup, right? So, the counters. They don't play the biggest role in this, but can certainly open Aladdin up when he's not expecting one of his own attacks that can be countered to suddenly be sent back at him. Meliodas additionally has Demon Fire and Darkness Manipulation, capable of scarring Ban and dealing damage to the Demon King with his Trillion Dark respectively. The two biggest factors though, the two real big factors for Meliodas' powers, are 1, his clones, which while dividing his stats up between them are huge in this fight, and 2, his regeneration, capable of easily reattaching limbs and healing other damage within seconds. But it's the regen that makes this fight so interesting. Meliodas heals quick and passively, needing no time to make it happen as he focuses on the battle, whereas Aladdin, actually, he doesn't even have healing spells, no regen either. And the damage he would take, if damaged at all, will stick with him the entire battle. What this means is that this battle can come down to a zero-sum game, where Aladdin may need to rely on spells to damage and knock Meliodas away, but the damage won't stick and can be countered. And Aladdin winning most likely means he walks away largely unharmed if touched at all. Meliodas, on the other hand, with his regen would 100% walk away unharmed if he manages to win. It's a battle that is truly a test of aggressor versus defender. Now, abilities are cool, but if your stats are simply far too low, they oftentimes don't mean anything, so let's jump into those stats. Starting with attack potency, Meliodas comes out ahead. By a small margin, capable of dishing out the damage Aladdin can do, but much more casually, also being able to outright beat Aladdin's potency with his own direct and focused attacks. I didn't mention Aladdin's Borg, or his barrier, in his abilities because, honestly, Meliodas' attack potency shows a good example in how even not at his absolute strongest, he could destroy the combined powers of Merlin's Perfect Cube, Elizabeth's Arc, and King's Pollen Barrier. At the same time, mind you, with Merlin's Perfect Cube alone being above Aladdin's Borg in feats and scaling. Note, however, he didn't do so in one attack, but he did destroy Merlin's Perfect Cube in one attack prior to this. So again, and that alone is already a bit above his Borg. So comparatively to attack potency, we want to look at durability, and this one isn't a slight advantage. Meliodas wins this stat hands down, being much tankier than Aladdin's own Borg at all times. Meliodas would easily survive multiple of his own attacks that could each destroy Merlin's Perfect Cube pretty casually. Now, this isn't to say he could just stand there and take blow after blow from Aladdin, but the silver lining here is that Aladdin also doesn't necessarily have to deal much damage, if at all, to take this victory, but stat for stat, Meliodas takes durability easily. The actual biggest takeaway for these stats, but I'll mention it here for the durability and attack potency, is that each and every clone Meliodas does vastly drops these stats, with even a single clone making Aladdin better in both stats, though only barely in durability with his Borg. This furthermore again will apply to the next stats. Speed and reactions play such a huge role. Speed always does, right? They are definitely separated stats, speed and reaction speed, and you'll see why if it's not already obvious. But Meliodas absolutely demolishes Aladdin in speed. It's not even close. Being casually and at minimum 5 times faster than the downstroke of natural lightning, Aladdin can't even move at the speed of natural lightning. This is the biggest advantage Meliodas has, and at this point, perhaps the stats are making you think he does have an easy fight despite the ability advantage Aladdin has. But this is where those reaction times come in. Aladdin would perceive Meliodas in super slow motion. His reaction time is so superior to Meliodas that quite literally each and every iota of Meliodas even beginning to move in a direction, something Aladdin can change with his vector manipulation, would be effortlessly reacted to by some form of magic. Even in the earlier parts, people who scaled to Aladdin at the time could react to natural light speed. You know, actually, saying at the time like that, I want to make it clear, I'm talking about at the time as in this was the earlier parts of the series. This is not some in-game for them. They could react to natural light speed. This not being Aladdin, nearly at his best, is a reaction of 608.6 times faster than Meliodas can move. And that's another reason why this fight is so insane. The clones affecting Meliodas' speed aside, Meliodas' reaction speed is still relative to his own speed. Minimum of 5 times faster than the downstroke, of natural lightning. And this means that both fighters would see each other as if in slow motion. Things like light speed attacks, or even relative to that speed, that Aladdin can use, it also means there are attacks Aladdin can use that Meliodas can't even perceive, or even begin to react to, or dodge. So from there, next we have intelligence, which absolutely makes a difference in fights, where Aladdin, simply said, destroys Meliodas in. Aladdin becomes a super genius, and while Meliodas, he's far from stupid in or out of a fight. But Aladdin is the type where the author actively tries to make the character an absurd amount of smart. His knowledge on dimensional space alone and his understanding on how to manipulate it, the boy is very smart. He's on some Batman stuff. And that leaves the last stat, and that is stamina, which is useless in this fight. Sorry, Aladdin technically wins by a landslide in this stat, but via the very nature of this battle, and these two, the fight would be determined long before Meliodas gasses out. It's not that Meliodas has bad stamina, but rather Aladdin just has an amount never needed for a single battle. So this covers quite a bit. I want to ask now, for those watching or listening, who do you think wins right now with what I've said so far? So, I'm going to recap real quick. You should think it out, see who you think wins. Here's a recap. Alright, starting with Aladdin, he has a huge advantage in his abilities, being able to manipulate many things and make it very hard to get to him, with a possible instant win in his ability to send Meliodas back and away for an infinite amount of time. His reaction speed in this fight, matched with his intelligence and large arsenal of those abilities, means he forces Meliodas into the hardest of situations with literally perfect timing. And if Meliodas clones even once, Aladdin can start to successfully box it out a little bit, with non-manipulation abilities. Meliodas, on the other hand, he can force Aladdin to stick with non-counterable abilities while being capable of simply taking any damage Aladdin can throw at him if it means closing the distance and still being fine. This is because his durability is much higher and his regen is something Aladdin can't even remotely replicate. This is further helped by the fact Meliodas has the attack potency advantage, albeit not by a super large amount, but he can certainly counteract the Borg with no difficulty. The cloning will also combine with his durability and regen, and finally his massive speed advantage to allow him to successfully close that gap. Get in, stay in, and get the decisive blow. Now consider each advantage, and if they were to fight 100 times, who do you place your money on? Remember, out of 100 fights, they don't have knowledge on each other. It's not like they fight the first time and they've learned. It's just, there's so many different scenarios, different ways that the battle could play out. If they were to fight 100 times, all the different ways it could happen, who you get your money on? I'll give you some time to think about it. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead. If you need more time, pause it. If you said Meliodas, you got it. And this fight is super close. My opinion is coming down to about a 55 out of 100 wins for the leader of the 7 deadly sins. And I'm going to break this down. I'm going to break the win down. Why it's so close, and why it's Meliodas that wins. We know Aladdin can win this fight. And I feel he'd do so at least 45 out of 100, of course. Making an argument for why he would win is easy. But Meliodas would win more often. Meliodas' speed advantage versus Aladdin's reaction advantage. Let's talk about it. Speed is the more important stat. It just is. And what some of you may have noticed is that Aladdin needs to actually physically move his arms or his fingers or his body to use his magic. You can actually go back through the video, either one, the Aladdin or this one, you'll see through the feats that I'll list. He's physically needs to be moving his body. Now, the speed of his magic working once brought out is fine in terms of speed, and many times being capable of being too fast for Meliodas to even react to. But Meliodas will close a large amount of distance by the time Aladdin can make something happen, and Aladdin simply can't stop him consistently enough. Meliodas also has what it takes to easily destroy his board, and potentially even one-shot with a clean hit once close. Meliodas furthermore could start off full countering an attack back at Aladdin. Like, this could be how the match starts, for instance. He full counter an attack back at Aladdin, who, while he could easily react to it, his physical movements needed to use magic would mean by the time he's dealt with that countered attack, Meliodas is already there. Easy win. There are more win conditions, but they are all very, very importantly, easy win conditions. A direct hit can do it. Aladdin, on the other hand, can't directly win realistically, being unable to seriously injure Meliodas or knock him away with a powerful blast that isn't full countered. Even more, with his revenge counter and regen, if damaged enough, getting close means Meliodas 100% will one-shot. He doesn't even need like a full direct hit anymore. Again, it's not all lost for Aladdin in this, where like warping away in a massive AoE can set up for that much needed distance where he can effortlessly react to his attacks and manipulate vectors, but unless he can land his endless force to send Meliodas away, he's not winning. But he's extremely intelligent and perfectly capable of setting this up. But this is not nearly as easy to pull off as Meliodas' win condition, and in this fight, it's Meliodas who takes that victory. So, I want to say thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and make sure to comment how you think this battle could go. I'd like to actually read it, see how everybody else feels about it. There are many ways it could turn out, and is a reason I don't care too much about super similar characters facing each other, because I enjoy battles like this. I don't want just two big muscle people going at it and, well, alright, now I looked at the stats and it's just kind of written in stone, right? I found this fight to be very interesting. If you enjoy this battle, hopefully you'll enjoy my next, and I'll be starting with Naruto. His opponent, stick around and find out. Till next time.